Jaded Show, the weekly show where I go through all the anime, manga, and other interesting stuff from the past week. This week has been kind of interesting for a little bit of our anime. Some places have swapped a little with this 5th episode. This is probably the time where a lot of anime fans kind of hit the doldrums a little bit in the anime season, where some of them are dropping off a little bit, thinking they'll probably come back to it after everything's over, and honestly, you can blame them. So we'll be going through the seasonal list as per usual, and then we'll be checking out some stuff I've been watching lately and reading, surprisingly, and we'll probably finish it off there for this week. So starting off, as we always do, with Blue Period. Thank God there is some imagery in episode 5. They've actually decided that they want to use like some visual imagery rather than relying on the audio and the dialogue to help carry it. Cool! I'm glad that they've decided to move in that direction. I don't know if it continues or not. I really hope it does and continues to push that boundary like I've mentioned in previous episodes. But the plot itself continues plodding along. There's nothing really new in terms of what we already had surmised from previous episodes. Nothing really gets revealed. It's just more exam practice. And honestly, it's him finally realizing his autistic vision, his dream, and what he conceives as his own voice, as it were. It really gave me a lot of flashbacks to studying for my own entrance exams, uni entrance exams, or the HSC in Australia, and trying to honestly understand what the hell is good art in terms of kind of analysis and things like that. And that's why I didn't take visual design or visual arts or anything like that moving forward, because I realized I am probably not the best person to ask about that. So I'll stick to more English type things where it's more tangible, at least for myself. I also saw that he kind of tried to copy what he previously did in his art, and you can't do that, unfortunately. It's not analysis where you're examining a specific piece that doesn't change. This is art, buddy. You've got to show something new. And I find it funny and surprisingly relatable that he tried to just emulate what brought him such a joy before. That is kind of what we do as humans, is we try to find what makes us happy and try to repeat that process in sort of like a Pavlov's dog sort of way. And often, more times than not, it doesn't. We have to continue to evolve and change how we do things. So I'm glad he's exploring that, and hopefully by the time he gets to his exams, he's realized what techniques he can pull out in order to produce a good artwork without having to necessarily rack his brains and produce an artwork that's like 1,000 times bigger than he is, because that would be ridiculous in an exam setting when you have limited time, I would assume, to produce whatever you need to. Moving on from Blue Period, we have Platinum End, obviously from our Death Note guy. Now they have some survivor's guilt because people are dead, and now they're like, oh my god, what can we do to save them or somehow atone for our sins for being god candidates, as it were. His parents seem nice. Mirai's parents seem really nice, and it's truly a tragedy that he's had to go through such hardship already with his parents dying because of his selfish uncle and aunt and things like that. And the anime does a really good job at definitely playing with the waves between emotions, between the tragedy and the kind of catharsis, I suppose. The big ways that people kind of can affect us, whether it's the parents or his this new character, Mukaido, who is taking advantage of the fact that he knows he has limited time left on this earth to play essentially judge, jury, and executioner for who God should be. And that is some heavy shit that man has never deigned able to do previously. And I don't think we as a species can impartially decide those kinds of things, if such things exist. Obviously, it's still playing around with the religious allegories and things like that. And more exploration of the main antagonist, is very welcome at this point. It's starting to really open up, and it's something that is going to keep people interested kind of in this doldrums period, where it's episodes 5 up to maybe 8, 9, maybe 10, where people are like, I'm probably going to stop watching this stuff week to week, go to do something else, and come back maybe by episode 11 and 12, see where it's at, and binge the whole thing. So I think this will keep a lot more people engaged, being able to explore what the main antagonist is doing and how this all resolves neatly. I am acutely aware that Platinum End does have more episodes than 13 than a regular core. I think they've already gotten approval for 24. So they already have 2 cores to be able to explore this stuff. And the fact that it seems that they have maybe an arc already planned with Metropolis Man, yeah, that's his name. With Metropolis Man, then it should end up being a very satisfactory kind of series to follow through on throughout the week, from week to week. But that's the hope. Mirai and Saki seem to be more passive than necessarily active in this case, mostly because they're kind of forced to be. I don't think you want to, kill yourself. Like, getting yourself killed doesn't help anyone. You need to help yourself before you can help other people, right? So Mukaido's plan to contact other god candidates to bring them all together against Metropolis Man, I think is a good idea, honestly, against Kanade. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. Definitely still something I'm watching. And I am pretty happy with how the anime adaptation has come out. I think Orba would also be pretty happy, I think. I don't see anything that's left hanging or things like that. The kind of introspection that I felt was missing from some of the previous episodes is definitely in here now. It is not playing as large a part as I would like, but it is clear that they're not leaving behind kind of plot threads hanging. They are trying to address things in a holistic manner. And that's a good sign that they have a specific direction they want to go, and they know when to pick up and let down plot lines in order to smooth out that journey, that ride up to whatever the climax is, and then the conclusion. So I think Platinum End should come out really good, and hopefully it lives up to sort of the Death Note anime, that kind of thing, the Death Note manga, and some of Orba's other works like Bakuman, which I didn't actually realize he wrote because it's so different in terms of its subject material compared to Death Note or Platinum End. But Bakuman was a great series, and I am assuming Platinum End is going to follow in its footsteps. From these first 5 episodes, it's very hard to stumble from this point, I hope. But we have seen anime do otherwise in other series. Speaking of series that are doing otherwise, Tucked Opus Destiny is starting to drag. Last week I said that there was some Chosen One stuff going on where Tucked, Asahina Tucked, and Cosette Destiny, whatever you want to call them, they're clearly meant to be, the mysterious ones that are to bring balance to the Force, as it were. Or the unknowns, the X's, the X Factors, the ones that will really shake up the world in terms of how the D2s and humanity interact. We're not getting anything at this point. There's a lot more mystery still building up, and it's wearing thin at this point, where everyone's like, oh, who are these people? How come I've never seen these people before? Yeah. Word travels. People travel. Word travels fast. And I don't think this whole situation where D2 suddenly attack a town that was previously very peaceful, where a mysterious music art and her composer show up to defeat the D2s, I don't think that would have gone unnoticed, especially by humanity's supposed defense force in the symphony orchestra or whatever. So I find it very hard to believe that these new characters in episode 5 don't know who they are, what they're doing, and things like that. And this whole thing about how, I'm not going to forget about you, blah, blah, blah. You should have already known him, and you should have already figured out a plan for what you're going to do with this unregistered music art and composer. I think it's getting really thin. The action's the only thing that's holding up the series, and the imagery and the metaphors that were supposed to be, well, not supposed to be, they were already put into the world. They were baked into the world with all the musical kind of references and terminology. That kind of aspect has not been explored nearly enough. You brought in all these music terminology and him playing the piano and all the rest of it, and the music arts being named after specific famous pieces of music, and yet you're not exploring either musically or in the action, whatever you want to do. You're not exploring any of it in a musical sense. The conductors don't really do anything apart from wave a wand around and, you know, try to look cool. They're not conducting a musical performance or anything. They're just paying lip service to the whole terminology bit of it that you've introduced into your world without having to explore any of it in any meaningful manner. So I'm very disappointed by that. We still have no idea about any of the D2's intentions, what they were meant to do here, why they invaded the Earth from the asteroid. Nothing's explained. None of the other characters have any rhyme or reason to their actions right now. You could say that the new characters they picked up on the train, right? Their idea is supposed to be the military of humanity as the symphony orchestra, right? That's kind of the point. But we don't get any idea of what their main objective is, apart from figuring out who this unregistered music art and composer is. And now they've met them, and they still don't know what they're going to do. It's starting to be more and more likely that this turns into a guilty crown. I'm losing a lot of interest in Takt Opus Destiny. I'll still keep going, maybe, for an episode or two, see if it gets any better. But unless I've missed something, which is quite possible, because, you know, I try to watch these on time and things like that, but I might have missed something. If I have, let me know in the comments below. But right now, I don't think Takt Opus Destiny is going to be a classic. It's definitely not going to be something I recommend to a lot of people. But if you're in it for the action, that's still holding up. I'm not saying that the animation's bad or anything. It's just the plot is not living up to my hopes, which is kind of sad, to be honest, because it started pretty good with all by actually tying in parts of the music and things like that into the action and the way things were moving. And now it seems they've kind of dropped that entirely, apart from calling some of the characters Walkure because of Wagner and his famous piece. I don't see where this goes from here. Moving on from Takt Opus Destiny, My Senpai is Annoying. Really nice episode about Valentine's, all the rest of it. Unmei and Gyuri chocolate drama, as always, brings up weird misunderstandings about who's looking for who and ways of finding love and all the rest of it. I am actually seeing a lot of similarities to another manga series that I'm reading called, the English translation is My Tiny Senpai from Work, and I think the Japanese is Ichi no Kansha no Chisai Senpai no Hanashi. So it's similar, except the genders are swapped, where the kohai is male and, you know, taller than the senpai, who is female and tiny. The managers both like to mess with their subordinates in terms of relationships and things like that. Although Senpai ga urasai, My Senpai is Annoying, is a little bit more reserved in that aspect. So if you're looking for something, you know, a little bit different, but you're looking for more of the same, I definitely recommend My Tiny Senpai from Work, especially since it also has a kind of companion manga as well, similar to like Takagi-san as a companion manga. So if you're looking for something extra to read on the side, there you go. I do definitely sometimes feel like Kazuma in this episode though. where you're not quite sure what's happening with other people, and then you might have made a misunderstanding at some point. And, you know, you try to sort it out and not cause too much of a fuss, and you end up causing a fuss anyway, and you didn't mean to, and it's just like, you know, gotta take a step back and take an L for the team. Alrighty, moving on from My Senpai's Annoying, our last anime for the seasonal list so far, komi-san. She said stuff. She finally managed to open her mouth and express herself, which is really good. It's definitely working the comedy angle and the, not tragedy, but the more emotional side of it, I suppose, really well in being able to flip that switch between, you know, the obvious absurdities of Tadano getting kidnapped and all the rest of it, compared to, for some people, the very real crippling doubts and fears of social anxiety. So I think it's doing pretty well in that department. The fact that it has such high highs compared with the lows does help kind of soften that blow between the two. And they're not jarring that switch either, which is really nice. Tadano and Komi reaffirming their friendship was pretty cute. Becoming friends is apparently as embarrassing as falling in love right now. It's almost as bad as confessing, which I found pretty funny. But, you know, I don't necessarily suffer from as crippling as social anxiety as they do. So for them, it probably meant a lot that they were able to express their emotions so openly to each other without having been like mocked or having that kind of self-doubt that you can't express yourself in a verbal fashion. So I think that was pretty good. And there's not really much else to say about komi-san. We're just slowly getting drip-fed more and more of the manga material, more and more of the classmates. And I think it can get through most of the side characters in 13 episodes that are at least important, because there are a lot of characters in komi-san. I don't know if they will introduce the second love interest, I suppose you would call her. I don't know if they'll introduce her in this season, because I reckon komi-san's going to get a second season just purely out of how popular it is well, globally, really. So we'll see where it goes. Right now, I think it's only been approved for 13 episodes, right? So I don't think they'll introduce her in this season by how slow they're moving. Because this episode was maybe a chapter or two, I think, in the original manga. But then again, the original manga has some chapters that last like a page, and some of them last maybe 20. So we'll see where they end up. Alrighty, I think that brings us to the end of the seasonal anime stuff I've been reading / watching during this week. I mentioned last week that I was reading a light novel series called Reborn as a Vending Machine, I Now Wander the Dungeon. I am working on the first volume to put out maybe as like a fan-recorded audiobook or something like that. It should be out fairly soon, I hope. It's pretty interesting, but it does fall into the normal pitfalls of a light novel, where because it's meant to be consumed in kind of smaller chunks, such as like when you're on the train and things like that. The way the writing style is very jarring sometimes. It doesn't flow very well. And sometimes it comes off as amateurish. I don't know if that's the English translation doing that, or if it's the native Japanese. You'd have to ask someone who can read Japanese, obviously, at a higher level than I can anyway, who can tell you that. But from what I've read of it, I've read the 3 volumes that are out, because I don't think there's going to be any more coming out. And of those 3 volumes, the premise was still interesting. There's definitely some twists on how to deal with typical isekai threats, and it was still had my attention until the end of volume 3, pretty much. So yeah, as I said, I'm working on volume 1 to maybe put out as maybe an audiobook type thing. We'll see how we go. but I've pretty much finished that off this week because, as I said, the light novels are pretty small. I think they're about 200 pages in pretty large font. So it's like 600 pages or whatever. So could get through it within a week or two. Moving on from light novels to more Western media. The Dark Pictures collection, House of Ashes. Normally I don't really include games on this list because the games I play tend to be more kind of session-based games, competitive shooters, that kind of thing. But this particular one is sort of like an interactive movie, and it's been made by Supermassive Games, and they did other games of the series. The one that I think is most popular is Until Dawn, that was released for the PS4, I want to say, and PC now, I think. But essentially they're like interactive movies where you make decisions for characters, things like that, and you can play with your friends and take control of different characters, that kind of thing. This particular installment, House of Ashes, is less horror, more action oriented. The actual story takes place in the Iraq War, in Iraq in 2003. So you can imagine what kind of things lend it to be more action oriented. It does have some horror themes in it, but not very many. This particular game was pretty interesting to me because it tries to maybe not ape visual novels or things like that, but take sort of that formula and transplant it more to a Western-friendly method of kind of doling out content as a movie rather than like a book, sort of. So it was kind of interesting in seeing how they framed different decisions and how those affected, you know, your playthrough. And I felt that the first run-through I did with a friend of mine, that particular run-through is kind of like set in stone in my mind as the movie, as it were. And though I know that there are different decisions that could be made, I would rather run through the movie, or run through the game again, sorry, not mixed up. Run through the game again with a different set of players, because then that way, you know, we make different decisions with different characters and then we get a different outcome. And we essentially watch maybe a different movie that's based on maybe like a singular nexus, a singular premise. And that kind of is a bit more compelling than visual novels, to be honest. I think the only one that really does that very well... I'm trying to think through visual novels now. I mean, Clannad, the one I have the most like experience with, I guess. Clannad definitely had that going on a little bit, where some of those roots definitely branched off in a very different direction from your initial premise of being in school, being a delinquent, and the rest of it. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think I'll probably go back and watch/play the other games of the series. I'll see if I can maybe get another copy for a friend or something. I think there's like Friend Pass for the other older games, but I'd have to check. And with that, I think that brings this show to the close. Thank you very much for sticking around. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like on the video, and if you have any questions or comments about any of the anime or manga or media in general that I've discussed here today, please feel free to leave it down below, and I'll get back to you either next week or reply to you in the comments. Yeah, this week and probably the next few coming forward, I should have a lot more videos coming out, such as like the Foreigner's Guide to Driving in Japan, the audiobook and recorded thing that I mentioned before, and maybe another retrospective or two. We'll see how we go. We'll see how work goes as well, because unfortunately that's still a thing. Anyway, thank you very much. I'll see you next time.